Thanks, Sonia.
Should I start now?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
So, hello everyone. My name is Sonia Quintero. I just recently graduated from University of East London, my master. I also did my undergraduate course in University of East London, and I would like to dedicate this presentation to the memory of Chidene Sim, one of my more beautiful and inspirational teachers who recently passed away. So, in memory of Chiden, today presentation. Well, I would like to start this presentation quite interactive. I don't want just to be talking and talking and talking. I also want to make sure you are part of this presentation. So I'm going to ask you some really few and very easy questions. And you can use the chat box to answer. So you don't need to open the mic. So we are not going to have so many voices around. You can use the chat box to answer the question. Are very easy. Don't worry, nothing difficult. So the first one is, from where are you joining us today? From where in UK? From where in London or around the world? I don't know. Someone from Europe or any other place? So you can write on the chat from where are you joining us today. Can see there are people answering the question. London, London, Edinburgh, Battersea, Bristol, Preston, Romania, West London. Amazing. South Africa, Colombia, and East London. I love that. We are everywhere. We are everywhere. Thank you. So, and now I'm going to do something a little bit more creative. So, I would like to invite you. I'm going to show you a picture, and I would like you to write just one word or even a sentence inspired by this picture. Whatever comes to your mind or to your heart about this picture. Don't think too much. Just whatever comes to your mind or to your heart, just write that one. Don't think too much. Tide, a voice, soul in those eyes. Oh, beautiful. Past and present, disappointed. Beautiful, thank you. Going to show you another one and the same. Just write one word or one sentence. And I will explain from where these pictures come from later during the presentation. What do you feel? What do you think? Okay, so have a look. Lost, shock and surprise, I'm sure. Displacement, press stop. Tiring. Homeless living room. Open living room. Lovely. Thank you. Another one. Again, just one word or one sentence. And again, don't think too much. Just what you're feeling. Beautiful. Thank you. Overwhelming. Thank you, Rachel. Beautiful. Thank you. Yep. I think that is the last picture. So if you can mute your microphone and write your answer in the chat box will be amazing. This is another one, is the last picture. As I say, I will explain at the end what is the connection of all these pictures and all this activity with my presentation. Amazing. Ah, thank you, Rachel. Yes. Marcela, it is. Thank you. And to finish this creative bit of the presentation, I would like to invite you to reflect in the follow question sentence. This is a sentence, and if you want to write something very short in the chat box about this quote, what you're feeling, your thought, your reflection, you can write on the chat box. Indeed, very sad. Okay, you can keep writing in the chat. It's okay. I just wanted to give you like a introduction about the presentation, but in a different way. Uh, Making sure you are part of the presentation, making sure you are part of this activity, and also about the conversation. So yeah, I'm going to start my presentation. At the end, I'm going to explain what is the connection with this activity and my presentation. So this presentation is based in my dissertation, my master dissertation. My master was about the meaning of home among LGBTQ refugees in London. And it's not a surprise, and it's very sad. The number of people who has been forced to flee their home countries due to the conflict or persecution, more than 82 millions last year. So as we say in the beginning of this conversation, probably the number now is even bigger, which is completely a shame. But among this number, among this incredible, difficult number, we have a community, the LGBTQ community, that has been quite invisible. There is no any information, there is no data about what is the number of people who has been forced to move, to migrate due to the sexual orientation, or even there is no information about how many people who has been moved actually are still hidden the sexual preferences because they are scared about what is going to happen in the host countries or even with the diasporas. So in somehow we are still invisible. even though if the refugees that are moving from these countries are in countries that apparently are more friendly with the LGBTQ community. And I would like to show you this map. This is the red countries here are some of the countries that homosexuality is still illegal. Countries where homosexuality is criminalized or persecuted. And there are more than 72 countries that people from the LGBTQ community can face even death penalty. According to the UK Home Office, let me move that one here. I don't know if you can. Yes, I think it's much better. You can see the information. According to the UK Home Office, the asylum claims based in sexual orientation in England only came from countries like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Malaysia, Uganda, Nigeria, and all these countries are part of the 72 countries that homosexuality is illegal, or they are persecuted or victimized. The top 5 nationalities in terms of number of asylum applicants in the UK are from Iran, Albania, Iraq, Eritrea, and Sudan. Again, all these countries are countries from the 72 that are where homosexuality is illegal. So as you can see, when I show this map, it's quite interesting because when I show this map, some people say like, oh, but it's 72 in more than 195 countries in the world. So in some countries, the situation is not really bad, It's only 72 that the situation is difficult. But what is interesting and what is very difficult for the LGBTQ community is that we don't suffer persecution only in the countries that is illegal. We also have this kind of situation in countries that actually homosexuality is not persecuted according with the legislation. And I'm going to give you an example. In this map, you can see the green countries are the countries that actually gay marriage is allowed. That the legislation is very strong. The legislation protects the LGBTQ community. And for this example, I'm going to talk about Colombia because it's my home country. It's from where I come from, and I can talk in first person for this one. In Colombia, for example, on paper, Colombia is one of the strongest legal framework in Latin America defending the rights of LGBTQ people. So on paper, it's like in Colombia is the paradise for the LGBTQ community. Whatever, after Brazil, Colombia is perhaps the most dangerous country in the Americas for the LGBTQ people. Even Brazil, that as you can see is also gay marriage is legal. There are some legislation that protect the LGBT community. Brazil is the first one, the most dangerous one, and Colombia is the second most dangerous country in Americas for the LGBTQ community. So we are not talking only about the 72 countries where legislation is against the community, but we are also talking about countries where apparently we are welcoming, we can have our relationships, etc. But still, there are so many cultural things that are against the LGBTQ community. In Colombia, for example, you even need to run away of the police because this is the more dangerous situation that you can be like an LGBTQ person in Colombia, is to face the authority, because they are going to be the first one that are going to punish you and are going to do something wrong anyway. So the situation for the LGBT community is not just in the 72 countries, it's around the world. And if you are coming from Colombia, from Brazil, or from even from Uruguay, or this kind of countries, you cannot claim asylum seeker based in your sexual orientation, because the legislation on paper protects you. So it's quite complex. It's very complex, I would say. So this is the situation around the world from the LGBTQ community. So when I start my research about the community, I wanted to understand what was on academia and research about the LGBTQ refugees, because that bring even more heaviness to the journey of the refugees to be from the LGBTQ community. Obviously, what I discovered is quite, uh, it's not a surprise. The majority of LGBT refugees come from homophobic countries, where many of them have been forced to be married, have a family, or even has been exposed to conversion therapies. And many of the LGBTQ studies are based are focused about policy and legislation, which is amazing. We need regulation, we need laws, we need policies, but these policies and regulation are not enough when we don't have understanding about what is happening to the person, not just to the number of people that are moving, but for the every single individual behind that number. So I think that is important. Also, what was quite a surprise is that many of the studies are focused in male. The trans community, the queer community is quite invisible somehow, even lesbians. So still it's very focused in male. So what is interesting is that show us how the heteronormative narrative have also permeated the refugees studies. So many policymaker activists with a really, really good intention, etc. But the approach is still very heteronormative and it's still very binary. So the legislation and the policies and everything is still, even the temporary accommodation, etc., are focused in portrayed everything like, to keep the narrative of the heteronormative in the refugees studies. The asylum seeker system is very, very difficult for the LGBTQ community. The documentation, the proof of the proof that they are asking, the evidence that they are asking is still make really, really difficult for the individuals to try to reach the system. Obviously, they are very exposed to even danger situation if they openly talk about the sexual orientation. Many of the LGBTQ communities, even living in London, they need to hide the sexual orientation because they are scared about the diasporas. So even if they are in a country that is open about the sexual orientation, still they have so many thing to work with the local diasporas and the people from the same country, so that make even more difficult. There is an intersection about faith, social aptitudes, stereotypes that make for the LGBTQ community keeping the cycle of shame and rejection. The relationship with the family, the relationship with the friends here, the relationship that the links that they can create with the people here in London or in any other country is very difficult. I'm going to talk about London because where my research was based. The LGBTQ refugees in London, they live in really precarious situation, and their mental health and their identity, ability to belong, all these have been affected because the situation, and obviously cultural factors such as faith, language, and social habits play a role in assessing social capital. One of things that surprised me is very sad is the difficulties for the LGBTQ refugees to make contact and have a really strong community around them. So the level of mental health issues and emotional challenge is very heavy. So this is in general the LGBTQ refugees, what I found in my studies. Because I was focused in my study about the meaning of home for the refugees community, for the LGBTQ refugees community. I wanted to challenge this narrative that we all are missing a place called home, that we all have this kind of melancholia and quite of romantic idea about what is home. And I wanted to see for the LGBT community was the same. So my studies was based in two different studies about home in the LGBTQ refugees. One that I found very, very interesting and I really recommend is Bront, 2015. Sorry if my pronunciation about the surname is not the best one, Bron, in 2015, they introduced the distinction between three different dimensions of home, and you can find home in capital letters. That is more about the political framework that define the borders of home, my country, my place, my land. All this idea about the flags, the songs, the what make you feel belong to the country, like the big place, like the big pictures. And home with capital letter, they make the distinction about this kind of metaphorical context that include uh, memories and narratives that we learn about our country, about our place, the dreams that we have about that place that we call home. And finally, home without capitals in what we call family. So that one was very interesting because it made me think, if we LGBTQ have the same feeling about our country or the symbols of our country, and also about the family, and also about the memories that we have about that places. So that theory, that approach from Rome was really caught my attention, and I based my research in this approach. And also another one was Bocagni, 2020, when they it's interesting because they are talking about the temporary accommodation. And one of the arguments in the study of Bocagni is that actually we should recreate the the environment from where the refugees come from in the temporary accommodation. So they are talking even about colors and about all the thing that we need to put in the places, that because if that make remember to the people, to the refugees about their countries, they are going to feel even better, they are going to feel even more welcoming, which for the LGBT community, we are going to see that is not like that. Because the memories, many of the memories, unless for the people that I was working in my dissertation, the memories about home was very painful. All of them were very painful. They have really sad memories about the country, about the home, about the families, and about the symbols, and about even about food or flag or all these kind of symbols that we connect with home. All participants were very struggling with this idea of missing this kind of thing. So in Brun and Bocagni, I base my research. So that one was the research. It happened in June, July 2021. It was just in the middle of the lockdown. We were like in lockdown, but some activities were allowed, other activities were not allowed, all this kind of difficult situation. I have indeed a one-to-one narrative interview, and then I have two creative workshops with 10 LGBTQ refugees in London, living in London. This is a big picture about the participants. Obviously, that are not the names. This is the information they decide they wanted to share with everyone. As you can see, it was a very young group. I think the elder ones 29. All of them were very young. They were openly from the LGBTQ community. The status about asylum seeker or undocumented or something like that, they were confused about in which one they can be, in which category, in which kind of category they can put themselves. And I think for the LGBTQ community, that is another challenge, because the umbrella of asylum seeker is not always covering our personal situation. So that one is the people that I was working with. And this is the methodology that I decide to have, the narrative research. Basically, I wanted to be focused about people, about the individual person, not just about the number of people, but also about the history and how they remember the situation they have to go through, which kind of memories they still have, which kind of how they talk about that memories, what was the feeling behind that memories. And I was thinking the narrative approach was really allowing me to have this kind of flexibility, and also to see beyond the history, actually. So it was not just the event that happened to the person, but also how this event affect the person, and is still affecting the person. So the narrative is not something that is static, but is something that is moving constantly, and is constantly building by the person who is talking about the event. So for me, narrative approach was the one that I have to use in my research. Also give me the opportunity to have themes, but not necessarily to be like, oh, I have to ask these questions. For me, was to more like follow the person, follow the conversation. I was feeling more like, okay, I'm here to listen you, because I want to know you are the owner of the knowledge. You have the knowledge of your own history, and I am here just like a witness and recording that history. But you are the owner, and the knowledge, the person who has the knowledge about your own history. And narrative give me all this kind of flexibility, and the idea that the topic that I was talking was very subjective. Home, feeling of home, meaning of home, is very subjective. So I wanted to give a space for every single participants to talk about that one. And because I am an artist myself, so for me, using art was the best way to overcome many challenges that we have. Like, for example, the language barriers of myself and also the participants, the cultural differences that we have, obviously. Uh, so for me, it was to giving the opportunity to express themselves in the way that they feel comfortable, and they feel safe, and they feel acknowledged. For me, that one was very important. Many of the questions that I asked to them was answered through different pictures, poems. They answered the question through illustrations. So for me, was a way to give them, to capture something that a number cannot capture, or even some words cannot capture. So for me, it was very important to give that kind of feeling that you don't need to have a big knowledge of the language to be able to express yourself. Um, so that one was amazing. Through this narrative and art-based research methodology, ethnography was quite organically come to the research, because we couldn't have the in-person activities. Everything happened online. Sorry, someone has the microphone open. I don't know if it's asking a question. No? Okay, so I'm going to continue. If you have any question, please just write on the chat, and I will check that one at the end. Or you can open your
I'm going
mic.
to check, Sonia, if there's any mics, but I think it's
Okay.
muted now.
During the interviews, and also during the art base, because the creative group was the creative was in groups, was no individual. So what happened is that we realized that was so many uh, terminology that was quite difficult for some of the participants to understand, and actually some of the words didn't have any translation. To give you an example, we have some participants that they talk Urdu, and in Urdu, heteronormativity doesn't have a translation, exactly translation. So when we start to realize about this kind of challenge during the creative activities, so the group decided to open a WhatsApp group. And in the WhatsApp group, I was part of the group, but I was not participating actively in the WhatsApp group. I was more like witness what was happening. So they start to share information. They start to share also some poems, pictures, and they start to interact in online in a really beautiful way. They still have the group. They still keep posting poems or words or even connections about different activities. So the ethnographic part of the research was quite organically. It was not my intention when I started the project. It was not my idea, but it was quite like, in the middle of the lockdown, we were doing that one in Teams, and then the WhatsApp group, everything start to merge in, and I think that one was a really beautiful thing to happen because for them, for many of them, it's still the only way they can interact with LGBTQ refugees or LGBTQ individuals. So I think that one was very important. And as I say, it was not the intention when I started the research, but I really welcome it when that one happened. So again, for example, for the narrative research, I didn't have any, as I mentioned, I make like a list of the questions that I wanted, more than question, like the theme that I wanted to have with them, but it was not something that I was completely narrow. I wanted to keep my mind open. Some of the questions that I asked to them was like, can you tell me about your migration experience? So that one was more like the starting point of the conversation. I didn't ask what was the meaning of home directly because I was thinking if I ask that kind of question, I'm assuming that home has a meaning for them. So I reframed the question more like, is the meaning of home relevant to you? So in that question, is that a really interesting conversation with them. Uh, we were talking about the binary approach about the understanding of home, how home is the idea of home is related with family and family is related with binary understanding of the world. So that all this kind of conversation or the question is that a really interesting conversation that they keep the conversation, they keep the conversation in WhatsApp group. With the creative activities, they make beautiful pictures. Some of the questions that they couldn't answer during the interview, they later sent me like, "Oh, Sonia, I couldn't answer this question in our interview, but this is the picture or the illustration that I took or I made to make sure I answered your question." So, for example, that one is we were talking about identity, about who we are, and how we perceive ourselves. When you had been, as the quote that we were reading in the beginning, remember about the 75% of the people around me think that homophobia, homosexuality is bad, and all this kind of thing. If you are living with this kind of people around you, how you perceive yourself. So we were talking about that one in the research, how they perceive themselves, and they really talk about how difficult it is to have some kind of uh, pride about themselves, because they feel that they are not good enough, they are not acceptable, they are not good sons or good daughters, or they are not good people, because this is what they have been listening around them in their families. So we were talking about this kind of thing, and for many of them, the best way to express that kind of challenge with their identity, with who they are, how they perceive themselves, was through art, actually, because some of them couldn't put that one in words. So they use some creative approach to talk about that one. When talking about ethnographic, I was using they were used that they were expressing in WhatsApp. So I make like a big list. My dissertation is very
Sonia, it's getting a bit hard to hear.
but it was very interesting. Repeat some more.
Sonia, it's getting a bit hard to hear you. Can you hear us?
Oh, isn't the connection?
Yeah, that's
I
better.
can hear you. Yes,
If you just get closer, probably just closer to the mic. Okay. Do other people have trouble hearing at the minute?
yes. Everyone say yes that they can hear me.
Great.
Okay, okay. Just let me know. So yes, let me know. It was it was an ethical and practical challenge. Obviously, during the research. Let me check. Okay, yes, it's look like everyone can hear me now. I'm really sorry about the interruption. Probably the connection. I don't know. Well, talking about the practical challenge, obviously for the LGBTQ refugees, and not only for refugees, but disclosing the sexual orientation for us is it could be very dangerous. It could be actually risk their lives, risk also the chance to receive support and legal assistance. Many of them were talking about the challenge of feeling accepted or be welcoming into the diasporas. So for the LGBTQ refugees, it was like even if they were with people from the same country, that they can share some of the things, they still don't feel welcoming in that diasporas. So many of them, I think 9 of 10 didn't have any contact with the diasporas. They don't have any interaction with people from the same countries. Um, oh, sorry. Obviously, when we were talking about some of the topics, for many people, it was really, really hard. The histories, the memory that they need to recreate was really difficult. So, one of the things that I was very aware was about the deception or emotional harm or any kind of uh, memories that was very painful for the people that I was talking. So I tried to be very gentle, give more time. That if we're supposed to have only 1 hour, some of the meetings, some of the events, the activities was more than 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, 2 hours with them, because I didn't want to just it's 1 hour and we are going to cut here, and when people are in the middle of sharing something really, really deep and sad memories. So I was very aware about that one, and also because many of them were talking about really traumatic events in their lives. So I think this is something that we people that are making the research or the studies, we need to be very aware about. It's not something that I wanted to cut with them, the relationships. And actually, as I mentioned, we still have the WhatsApp group. I still am in contact with them. And I think that is very important. Obviously, COVID brought so many challenge for the group. uh, you probably know how difficult it is for many LGBT refugees in general to have access to equipment or connection. Um, so, so that one was another challenge. So the university asked for all the online research happening teen, and many of them didn't know how to use teen. Many of them didn't have the app. They didn't have the equipment to make the app in the telephones. So that one was a challenge. We overcome the challenge. They have the equipment at the end, but that one is something to take in consideration. Is quite difficult, and also because COVID brought an extra challenge in terms of emotional balance. I mean, it was very difficult for many people in terms of mental health. Made more difficult the situation for the refugees. All the documentation and all the kind of official things were even more slower than before. So that one was an extra challenge for them. Yes, I think we couldn't avoid that, and I think it's something that is just need to be added to the research. Obviously, the cultural and language differences, that one was very interesting, and I think the creative approach really helped with that one. And the fact that three of the participants, they know each other before the research, so that one was also helped me to actually create quite trust and bond with the group. So they keep helping each other. Um, three of them were know each other, but also they were activists in LGBTQ refugees field. So that one was also very important because they really engage with the participants that actually have more group together. That one was very important. And I would like to share some of the quotes of the group. This is part of the conversations that. So they were talking about themselves, they were talking about family, they were talking about even faith, they were talking about some of them that were the activists, they were quite more vocal about the world, the society, the social issues that we need to face. That one was very important for them. And they were very critical, questioning the status quo, and they were questioning about how home has been portrayed for the LGBTQ community, how refugees have been homogenized like community, like we all are the same, but we are not the same. And the challenge that we have to go through are different and impact us in a different way. And for that reason, it's so important to listen the individual history behind what the media portray like the refugees narrative. Mm, this is one of the quotes. I hope you could read. I'm going to show you a little bit more another quotes. Um, as I said, they were questioning about the family, the binary understanding about family. Aisha from Iraq, she, for example, she was very interesting because she was coming from a really open mind family from Iraq. They were very social activists actually about human rights, all these kind of thing. But when she disclosed her sexual orientation, that one was a mess in her family. So she was reflecting about how even for open mind people, when the situation is part of their personal experience, is completely different. She ran away from her house. She doesn't have any contact with her family, even though their family was a very open mind, human rights activist, etc., etc. So I think uh, it's different when it's something about the sexual orientation. There are still so many stereotypes and bias and ideas about how the world has to be or should be. And well, this is the one of the creative activities they produce. As you can see, some of the pictures that I showed you in the beginning, that one was the description. I was asking what was home for them, and that one brought a really interesting conversation because this person took a picture of a sofa just in the middle of the street. Um, so we were talking about she was talking about to feel safe in an open space when there are no walls around. There is even a bottle. I don't know if you can see, there is a bottle here in the picture around the sofa, and she was mentioning how the picture make her feel like, oh, actually I can sit in the middle of everywhere to have a drink or something, and I'm going to feel safe or contained even in an open space. So that one bring a really interesting conversation about that one. This picture is very well, it's very graphic about home. This is a collage that one of the participants create. And we were talking about this romantic idea about home, that we all miss home. And actually, I remember he was talking about how even smell the food from their country make feel him sick. And he was mentioning that one. He was like, I cannot smell that food because it made me remember what I was living in my house. So when I smell that food, I feel sick. That one was very hard. His experience was very difficult. He was obviously rejected in their family, but also his experiences in the temporary accommodation was really hard because the temporary accommodation are made also in a very binary and heteronormative way. So there is no space for differences in our sexual orientation, even in these temporary accommodations. In many of them, I'm not going to say in all of them, but in many of them. So he not only have a really difficult experiences in their home, in their house, but also when running away from that country in the refugees camps and also even in London. So it was very interesting. We were talking about food, we were talking about the flag, and he was completely sick when we were talking about that one, and he was the stronger one about that, but not the only one. From 10 participants, as I mentioned before, 9 of them are completely away of the diasporans. They don't have any contact. 7 of them, they don't have nothing about food or flags or any color or songs or music, nothing that remember that home, because actually that make them feel sick. So this is the thing that they create. And they also write some poems. Uh, Many of the people that wrote the poems were people that actually they were not very vocal during the interactions because they have language barriers and they didn't feel confident to talk a lot in the group or even in the conversation. But interestingly, they sent me many poems about the conversation that we have, about the thing that they were thinking when we start the conversation, about the interaction in WhatsApp. So I remember Arif, for example, he was like, oh, someone said this thinking WhatsApp, and it made me feel that I want to write that. And he sent me the poems. So as I say, we are still in contact. I think is we need to bring more visibility about how these narratives of heteronormativity and are impacting the community, not only the LGBTQ community. I think it's impacting everyone, because also about gender is impacting how women are perceived in the LGBT in this. But also, I think it's quite interesting because bring some kind of reflection about the internalized homophobia that we have in countries that's supposed to be open mind, in societies that's supposed to be welcoming, and have legislation that protect us. But I think it's important to have the reflection about the internalized homophobia and how internalized heteronormativity is impacting not only the LGBTQ community, not only refugees, but society in general. Well, I think it's time to have some questions, to answer some questions if you have any questions. Let me see the chat. You can open your mic and ask questions, or you can
Sonia,
write on the chat. Yeah.
Sonia, I'm with you. I only have 4 minutes to stay with you. I just wrote to Corinne a little bit before. It is a joy to share to learn about your experience, and especially to learn about the stories and the lives of the people you invited in your research community in a way. And I'm really happy to share this with my students in psychology. Since Romania is not on the green part of the map, even if legislation is not harsh against, but our culture is not open to these aspects, and there is a lot of debate. I think traditional ways of looking at Christianity, Orthodox Christianity, is not welcoming, and it is. I think we need to continue our struggle to live with many possibilities of adopting identity. So I think your research is very welcome. I really enjoyed it, and I hope to keep in touch. And I want to thank Corinne for making this happen. It's just beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And yes, religion was something that we were talking a lot in the research, a lot, because they all come from really strong faith families, families in faith. Really strong, and that is talking a lot with the faith, you know. Some of them, I know, I'm not sure if I have that one here. They almost all of them mention something about God rejecting them and how they feel like sinners. They were bad people. All this kind of rejection that come from the structure of beliefs or something like that. And that one was something that we talk a lot about in the research. It's something that is really affecting how people perceive themselves. I wonder if there is any other question or any comment that you want to do about, you want to have about the quote, about the poems, or about even the research. You can see the chat.
There's a good question there from Shamim already.
Yes. Yes. I didn't leave Colombia because EQ, even though the situation in Colombia is very difficult.
Sonia, we didn't hear that last bit. Your connection.
I have to say, for example, I wouldn't.
Sonia, your connection is not clear, so we are missing you. We can't hear you at the moment.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I don't know why you mute the computer mute themselves. My goodness. Yes, thank you for the question. Okay, the first question. Okay, here. Yes, about my positionality. I was talking a lot with my supervisor about my positionality because I'm from the LGBTQ community. I identify like a lesbian. I also moved from another country, a really dangerous country, and from the perspective of the LGBTQ community, that is Colombia, and also we have an internal conflict. Even though that one was not the reason I moved from Colombia, but still it's a place that I don't feel safe when I go back to Colombia. And my interest about the meaning of home come from because I was part 3, 4, 5 years ago. I was part of a study. I was taking like a participant, taking part about the study about the meaning of home for people, for everyone. And I remember how my positionality in that research, like a participant, but also like from the LGBTQ community, was not completely fully understand. What I was thinking about home was completely different in many different ways about what other people was talking. In that moment I didn't understand it was because I was from the LGBTQ community, but I understand that my positionality, I start to be curious about if that one was my feeling or the feeling of other people from the LGBT community. And obviously that make easier for me to approach the LGBT community, but at the same time, I was very aware that it could impact how I direction the research. So I was in all the time in contact with my supervisor to make sure I keep my balance. I was no, I didn't want to put my personal experience like LGBTQ, like a person that moved from another country, in the research. I wanted to be fully giving the fully history of other people from refugees, no from my perspective. So I think that I try, and I hope I keep the balance about my positionality, and no, my personality doesn't influence the research. I think that one was very important. And the data I make, for example, the in the WhatsApp I code. So which word were more repeated, which kind of words they use or sentences they use to talk about some kind of topics like home or like a family, all this kind of thing. And about the creativity, I didn't necessarily analyze the art, but more about the language, body language that they were using when they were talking, when they were expressing, even how they send me some of the art. Because some of them send me something and they say something. They say like, I was in tears when I was writing this poem because I didn't realize. So I didn't analyze the poem, but I analyzed how they sent me the poem. What was their feeling when they sent me the poem. I remember, it's something that I didn't mention in this presentation, but I remember many of them, for some reason, they talk a lot about when family, they make the relationship with death. 10 of 10 participants were talking about, oh, I'm dead for my family, oh, I die for my family, oh, my family doesn't exist, they die for me. So they recreate that kind of grief all the time. So how I analyze the data and the information was what they repeat a lot, what was the body language when they were sending me when they were talking. And obviously, as I say, I didn't analyze the poems. I analyzed more what make them write, or what was the feeling behind. There is another question. Yes, Aine is asking that I mentioned that not many participants had contact with other LGBT refugees. Did you have difficulties recruiting people to take part? It was difficult. It was difficult to bring the people, but I think it's because, for example, many of refugees, they have to move from one place to another one. So it's very difficult to have like that sense of community for the LGBT community and refugees, I think, because they constantly. What make easy for me to bring them together is that I know 3 of them beforehand, and they help me to reach the other people. So that one was really helping me to bring the participants. Because I am also part of different groups, community groups. I have a creative writing group in my community. I have been working also with Queer Newham, that is a local group that also work with LGBTQ. So more or less I know people in the field, so that one was a little bit easier, but is a challenge, I will say. It's not difficult, it's a challenge. What was the most difficult for you as a methodologist at one prepare you well to do research? The most difficult, I think the most difficult was to witness the histories that they were sharing with me. Many of the histories, many of the events that happen to them are really difficult to listen. It's really affecting you in a personal level. When they were talking about how the life of them is very difficult. How they perceive themselves is very sad. I mean, for me that one was the more difficult thing, and I try to keep my balance and don't feel very attached to the histories that they were sharing, and try to help them, like, oh, I'm going to help you, I'm going to give you more information, I'm going to be there for you. I think that one was the more difficult, because somehow I haven't have any, not even close experience like they had in terms of the family, or in terms of the countries, or in terms of conflict, or internal conflict, or wars, even though Colombia is in a really difficult situation, but none of my experiences has been as bad as the experience that they were sharing with me. So to listen that one was very difficult, to listen how some of them even hate themselves, or they don't have any connection with their families, with their siblings, with the parents. It's really heartbreaking, and I think that one was the most difficult part of the research. I have a really good supervisor. She was amazing, and I also have different friends, activists, people who give me another perspective. I was talking with two really close friends and activists that I was asking questions also to them, how I can keep the balance, how I cannot feel personally attached to the research, because in many ways the research is about the people, that the participants, but I think it's also about you, like a researcher. If you feel that you are going to make a research, you are going to make a study, it's because you feel somehow connecting with that situation or with that population. You are going to make a research about something that calls your attention, that is in your heart. So to keep the balance and don't make the situation affecting you in a personal level, that is a challenge. That one was very difficult for me. What other question? Yes, Kalum, creating a sense of community in such unstable and vulnerable time can be very challenging. Absolutely. It's challenging. It was challenging without COVID for this specific community. So you can imagine with COVID, that one was, it has been very difficult for many of them. And as I say, I think that one was the more difficult, even more than write the dissertation, even more than have my meetings with my supervisor and everything, even more the academic. I think the one that is very difficult is about the listening, that one. And I think this is the beauty of narrative, that you are in contact with the person. People are not just numbers, and I think we normally forgot about that. People are not numbers. They are people. There are histories, families, memories, feelings, and that is what narrative and creative approach can give us. Do you think you empower your participants? I want to think that, but I think one of the things that I say in the final conclusion of my dissertation is that actually they are very empowered. They are strong and they are brave. Just the fact that in the middle of a civil war, in the middle of all the rejection from your family, you still stand up and say who you are. That for me is amazing. I think I wish I just give a platform that they can be even more empowered, but they are empowered already. They were questioning things, questioning in a way that I never questioned in myself. And they are in a really difficult situations. I mean, people that say I am a trans person, I am lesbian, I am queer, just in the middle of the more difficult situation, even if they know that they are going to be rejected for every single person, and still they stand up. I think they don't need my empowerment. I was feeling more empowered by then, to be honest. But I hope I give something to them. I give a platform, I give them a space, I think. Let me see if there is another person, another question. Thank you, video. Thank you, Heba. Thank you so much, Sonia. Thank you, Iris. Thank you, Carlo. Any other question? Any other comment?
Sonia, could you take up Heba's question about
Thinking in 1 hour, to be honest, is, so
Sonia, your connection's gone a bit. Oh, hopefully it's come back now.
yes, I can hear you now.
Could you take up the question that Heba asked about how much was this individual or shared? How much came out of the shared experiences and how much from individual interviews?
What is the question? Sorry.
How much of the material came out of individual interviews and how much was it just shared within the group?
I will say that more information come from the creative writing groups, when we were in groups, because I think that one made them feel quite more relaxed. And what I have two individual interviews, one in the beginner, that one was the first one, and then I have the two creative workshops, like groups, and then another interview. And I noticed the difference. In the first interview, they were very shy. They didn't talk a lot. They didn't get me much information. But after the first creative session, they start to talk more. Because it was a lead in a way that they didn't feel part of an interview. It was more like, if you want to write a poem, if you want to write your history, if you want to take a picture, if you want to take, and we were laughing, we were having a really nice time, and then many information come from that one. And after this first creative session, they open the WhatsApp group, and then all the information start to pop up in that conversations. So I think the first one was quite, don't give me much information, but get me information in a way that I can compare between the first one and the last one, and also how they grow and the trust grow, because they to share personal experiences in the workshop. They know each other more, and they were giving, I'm very grateful because you explained me what heteronormativity was. It was very interesting to see how they grow, because the interaction in WhatsApp and because the creative activities. So I think that one gave me even more information than the first interview. And obviously the last interview, that was the end of the research, it was very rich, it was very good, because they feel more confidence, they trust me, So they were talking more and openly about the struggles, about also about the difficulties during the research, that the thing that they didn't understand. For example, I remember one of them, someone I think was from Syria, I don't remember exactly, and he said that in London it was the first time he was gay, yeah, male gay, and he said that it was the first time that he meet that one can happen. So that one was very interesting, because obviously in WhatsApp everyone was like, no, but there are also queer people, there are also biological things, and they were explaining, and for some of them were like, wow, it's the first time I heard something like that. What is that? Even though they were from the LGBTQ community, which is very interesting, you know. So I will say from the creative writing and the WhatsApp group, we have more information from the data.
That's really interesting, Sonia. So in fact, where you said, I think you said arts-based research, in fact, that was the primary area where the research happened.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And taking consideration in WhatsApp, I was a witness. I sometimes I just put something in the chat, you know, but I didn't encourage them to say anything. It was between them. So for me that one was very rich experience. Yeah. And obviously how they send me almost all of them send me the pictures of the poems or everything with something personal, was not just send me information. They say like, oh, Sonia, after this conversation with this other person, I was feeling something, I wanted to write this poem. I remember that happened, wanted to take this picture or do this illustration. So they send me personal comments. Don't know if there is any other question.
Could you say a bit about where this is going? Because, you know, you said at the beginning that you're having this exhibition later. It'd be lovely to have a link for that. But also, you know, it seems like you have, I mean, it's not, you know, you are going to go on forever in this group, but you have a relationship now with the group has a relationship, and you have a relationship with the group as well. How does that work?
Yes, in the
do the research and stop.
Middle term, we are going to have the. No, I think this kind of thing cannot stop somehow, because it's the main thing about the research was to bring awareness, and bring awareness is something that doesn't have a deadline. We need to keep pushing. We need to keep giving information about how LGBTQ refugees life and are perceiving in society. So the lines of my idea is to continue, obviously, not only with this group, but actually make the the group bigger. And also in the middle time, we are going to have the exhibition. We are going to have, my idea is to have more online talks about the research, probably be more focused about in the finding, not in the methodology, but what I find, which I think is very important, talking more about the heteronormativity, more about the internalized homophobia, that I think is so important, because this is something that we also were talking during the research, is more how they perceive themselves, because they have this internalized homophobia, and how we like society perceive LGBTQ, and we have internalized homophobia. So I think that the conversation has to continue. I think it's very important. The idea in the middle time is to have more exhibition, online talks, where Corinne, you know that I apply for my PhD scholarship, so I hope that allow me to continue with the research in terms of the academic part of the activity, because I think one thing is the academic, that is very important, but the other thing is about activism, bring awareness, that I think we can do even if we are not in the academic world. That is a really good question. do you think your identity has some influence on your outcomes, means more personal relevance? I think it's impossible don't have some kind of influence, because as I said before, when you are going to do a research or a study, I think you do that one because it's close to your heart. Somehow is you are interested in something, because you are going to do a research or a study because you have some interest about that one. And sometimes it's a personal interest. In my case, for example, I am from the LGBTQ community. I'm from another country. I wanted to bring awareness about that one. And obviously, for example, the personal memories that they were sharing meet in somehow with my personal memories about my own experience as a lesbian in Colombia, my own experience with my family, my own experience with my siblings, with my brother, with my parents. So obviously that I try really hard with talking a lot with my supervisor, with my friends, to keep the balance and to have the face of the researcher. But I think there is some moments in that you really put yourself, you compromise yourself, your personal experience. I try to keep their narrative and my narrative separate, be very aware about what this is their history and this is my history. But obviously there are some moments that you see that there are some common histories, something that we have in common, and we can avoid that. Yes, so I think that there definitely there is some influence in both ways. In both ways, I think it's someone that said that there is no influence in the result of the research. I don't know if it's for everyone, but in that case was something that was I put all my effort, and was more than 1 year, because when I start my research, when I start my master, I knew what I wanted to do. Before, I knew what I wanted to do. So for me, it was very important to bring that voice, the voice of the LGBTQ refugees, to the front line.
Shamim, do you want to come back? Yeah, I think you're still off mute, so do you want to come back?
Sorry. Corinne, are you talking to me?
Hi, Shamin. Hi.
Do you want? You're still there, so I wondered if you wanted to come back and comment.
Oh, no. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I hope that.
Yeah. I got the answer. Yeah. It is really nice. It is really nice to talk about these old things, and though the signals were very poor, but the topic is really nice.
I think it's
can't hear many times.
Sonia, you've disappeared, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No voice, no sound.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, here you are, back. Great.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think when you start a research, or when you are going to commit to do something for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, you are going to look for the literature. You are going to put yourself in that in that study. Is I mean, it's important to have some kind of personal interest.
Yes.
In what you are going to do.
Can I ask you, Sonia, did you have any guides, anybody that you looked to who had done other arts-based research that you thought was really interesting, or was this more or less something that you created for yourself?
In terms of the creative activities, Corinne?
Yeah, exactly.
No, I completely create that one for my own. I was talking with my supervisor. She was asking me a lot how I will lead the session. But basically, because I have the creative writing group, I put the same methodology that I use in my creative writing group into the creative activities that I did with the group, with participants. So I explained that one to my supervisor. I say, well, this is what I do in my creative writing group. What about if I do the same in this research? And basically, for me, it's very important to build trust. And you build trust through acknowledge. It was not about criticizing their art. It was not about criticizing their pictures of illustration or poems. At the beginning, I say to them, I'm not here to tell you if your poems are good or bad. I'm not here to tell you how to take a good picture or not. It was not about skills, learning that the skills. It was more about allow them to express themselves through art and to their creativity. And I put that one since the beginning. No one is going to make a joke about your poems. No one is going to judge if your pictures are good or bad. Whatever you bring, whatever you do, it's okay and are welcome here. So we have, for example, after someone shares something with us, a picture or an illustration, we clap. That one is like something that I use a lot in my creative writing group. We clap, we acknowledge, we celebrate, and this is something that I also use in with the group. All the time that someone shares something like a poem, a quote, show a picture or something, we clap, we celebrate that the person was trusting us.
Very nice to see you. Thank you so much for such a nice topic and very important topic. Very important. Need to be research or learn.
Thank you. Absolutely.
This has been lovely, and I just wonder
Any other questions, any other comments?
Yeah, anybody who hasn't spoken particularly might want to come in at this point. Also, if you have spoken, obviously.
But I think they are quite happy.
Something from Sophia.
Okay, yes. Why was creative writing especially the best methodology for you? Well, I'm a poet myself. I have been writing many publishing books, poetry books, and I have a creative poetry group here in Newham. So even though I didn't put so much emphasis about creative writing, for me was more about creativity, because I was aware that some of them probably didn't wanted to write. Probably they wanted to take pictures. They wanted to take picture or make illustrations or something like that. So I didn't say to them, it's going to be about creative writing. I normally, for example, like what we did earlier in this presentation, I show some pictures and I say, okay, you are going to write one word, you are going to write a quote, or take a picture about this quote, how you represent this quote in a picture or something like that. So it was very playful. I love to play in my creative writing workshops. I like to, I don't know, it's something like the childhood, this kind of, we can play, we can have fun, and at the same time we can think and reflect and questioning things. And I don't think that we need to be very serious about questioning things. We can question things through play, and this is what I try to do in my creative writing or creative activities. Bring people to think, critically thinking, but through play, so that actually people don't feel that it's quite heavy. So this is what I try to do in the creative activities. We were looking like we were playing and have fun, but actually we were thinking and reflecting and questioning, and that one was very important. And that one was the best methodology for me and for them, because firstly create trust between us. That one was, for me, was so important. I wouldn't have any really consistent information or narrative or histories if they don't trust me. So to creative activities, I think that that trust can be built quicker and deeper, I think. So for me was very important, that one.
Thank you.
I
I've
hope that
just
answers it.
shared a link for July, Sonia, but do you have a link for the exhibition as well?
Not yet, but I can share that one with you as soon as I have that one, Corinne.
Yeah, that would be excellent. Then we can send it to this list actually. So yeah. Thanks, Sophia. Thank you so much. Have we come to the end, do you think?
I think so. I think so. And thank you so much, Corinne, for the invitation, everyone. It has been amazing. I think this is what we need to share, what we find, bring more visibility. I think Corinne is posting the email.
I'm posting an email address because if you want to be on the list for more events like this.
Sophia is asking something about the creative. There is this author. I really recommend.
Okay.
Cara 2015. I think I sent that one to just Corinne, but I'm going to post that one in the chat.
Please, yeah.
This is the person that I was reading the books and everything. They are really, really good, and she's really good about creative research. Cara 2015.
That's really helpful. That's really helpful. Even though your own process was developed from your background, you drew on that as well.
Yes, because that give you more the theory behind. So I develop my own activities, but actually, Cara, they give you really, really good theoretical background if you want to read. And actually, she give you some ideas about how to create some activities.
Brilliant. Thank you. That sounds like it could be helpful for Sophia in the methodology chapter. So that's great.
That's actually incredible. Thank you so much for that. Yes.
And also, if you look in YouTube about her, about Cara, there are other people working with the creative activities, and they give you the theoretical framework, but also some ideas.
Oh, incredible. Thank you very much. I'm also a theater practitioner myself, and I'm doing a PhD in asylum narratives. So that is very close to home.
Amazing. Yes, absolutely. Amazing.
That's great, Sophia. Maybe next year you can be presenting like Sonia here. It would be lovely to hear from you when you have material for that.
That would be great. How do I get? My supervisors sent me this event. How do I get in the email list?
So if you email association of, it's just the email that I put in the chat.
The Gmail, okay.
Yeah, then we can put you on the e-list, and then you will get announcements of this. These events, which are graduate student events, but of course they are more widely used than that, and then also other events around narrative that we just publicize on that list.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Corinne. I'll do that now.
Nice to meet you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It's amazing. I hope you can have something useful from this talk, and keep in touch with Corinne and with me if you want to know more about the research, if you want to know more about narrative. Thank you a lot.
Thank you, Sonia. It's really been a great pleasure and a privilege to hear about this work and the people that you worked with as well. So thank you. I'm sure we're all really, really loved hearing about this. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. We'll send the link to this via the Eventbrite list, and do email that email if you want to be on the announcement list. Thanks again, Sonia. Look forward to reading about this more.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.